Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joins us. How are you doing, Alec?
Good, guys. How are you doing?
Can't complain. Dylan's, that's all he does is complain. Just kidding.
Excuse you, Jim. You know, I'm very level-headed. I feel like that's my brand here, and I try to protect it. So, yeah.
Exactly. He's exactly the truth. He is telling the truth. What's the temperature like there in Fort Wayne?
It's not bad here. It snowed a lot last night. We got it was raining all yesterday, then it snowed all last night. So we woke up to another dusting here, but it's not super cold out this morning, I believe. If I check my weather app here, this is a visual medium. It is 18 degrees actually. So yeah,
same as it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just checked, same as it is here. That's too cold for me. I mean,
especially after it got up to 50 the other day.
I was jealous. Yeah, I was out on the deck the other night. Not tonight, baby. Not last night. Just getting in the door. Yeah, and off the air you mentioned, Alec, no game this weekend, man. Or that's just weird, especially with the length of time in between games and at the time of the season right now. I don't know if it's good or bad for Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, you never want to have to play 3 games in a week, which they're going to have to do, right, with a Monday, Thursday, and then Sunday game. So that's not always ideal, especially at this time of the season when you're already struggling with your 2 big guys with Race and Trace, obviously playing a large amount of minutes and them having to shoulder a lot of the load and responsibility. So we'll see how that works. I mean, the only positive, which Dylan said, right, is, you know, you may get a little bit of a tired Ohio State team, which is obviously going to be somewhat of a positive. But, I mean, at the same time, if you lose that Ohio State game, and that just puts a lot more stress and pressure on those 2 very winnable games with Maryland and Minnesota, and 2 games that you can't lose in a short week. That's just a lot of pressure. So, I mean, I think you look at Monday's game as close of a must-win as possible for Indiana, especially at this point in the season with everything going on right now with the 4-game losing streak. So there's a lot of things that need to go Indiana's way here coming down the stretch, and it's kind of disappointing when you look at where this team was 2 weeks ago, even a week and a half ago, and you see the kind of 180 that this team really took, and you really point to that Northwestern game the night before, and everything that happened there is kind of that unraveling of what potentially could be the unraveling of this season.
Well, the game against Wisconsin the other day, they put themselves in the position to win that, and they took themselves out of the position to win that. So when they can't do that at home, it really makes you wonder how the hell they're going to manage to do this on the road in a hostile environment, because they had the recipe and it was right there for the taking and just could not close it out. And that's twice that they've had Wisconsin dead to rights and just could not close them out. And it wasn't because Wisconsin did anything super special. They didn't make a lot of mistakes toward the end, and Johnny Davis is a bad man. Don't get me wrong, but they did not do what they needed to do to close it out.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the most disappointing part, right? I mean, you've really leaned on Trace Jackson Davis the majority of the season, and obviously throughout the entire part of that game. But when it came down to crunch time, he didn't have a shot in the last 2.5, 3 minutes there of the game, and that's something that can't happen. Obviously, there were a lot of different double teams and a lot of different defensive actions that were thrown at him, but there's absolutely no way that ball should leave his hands and not return almost immediately, just due to the sheer fact that offense was running through him, and he was getting fouled almost every single time he wasn't attempting a field goal. So the fact that they seem to be okay with letting some of the other guys take some of those shots. Obviously, throughout the period of the game, you would want, an Xavier Johnson or a Trey Galloway to take an open 3 if it were there. But under 2.5 minutes, when those possessions are going to be limited regardless, you can't have that happen. And obviously, they got a little bit lucky with a few of those shots being as bad as they were. That Galloway 3 that obviously kind of bounced right into Johnson's hands for that layup. But outside of that, I mean, they kind of went back to the stale offense that they have almost every 3 minutes and under in every second half. And I just, obviously you point to the guard play, and that's the huge issue with this team that seems to keep rearing its head over the course of these 5 seasons here. But there just has to come a time where one of these guys knows how to make a play and makes the play that's needed. And I think you look at this team and you have really no confidence that that's going to happen. And so you almost need that 20-point lead going into the half, because you don't feel too comfortable with any of these second half leads that Indiana has, no matter how much or how little time's on the scoreboard, just due to the fact that the guards can't play at a consistent level from game to game, let alone half to half, or even minute to minute in this Indiana season.
Dylan?
Yeah, I felt it was interesting. I think one of the most interesting moments of this during this losing streak has been right after the Wisconsin game, when basically Trace said that he would want Xavier Johnson to take that shot 10 times out of 10, and then Mike Woodson came out there and disagreed and said, I want Trace taking that shot. And I thought it was really interesting that, like, Trace trusts his teammates almost more than Mike Woodson trusts some of his players right now, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. And it was interesting to me, especially because the game plan obviously against Wisconsin was feed Trace until we can't feed him anymore. And it worked for 39 minutes. And then in the most important moment, Trace was like, I'm gonna give another guy a shot here. And I understand the impulse, right? Like it's a smart basketball play. You have 3 guys collapsing on you. You have a guy wide open at the top of the key who's a 35% 3-point shooter. It makes a lot of sense in the moment as a basketball play. But it's one of those things where when you are an All-American, that's your shot. And I do wonder whether that's something that Mike Woodson is going to have to drill into him here as we go forward.
Yeah, not having that, though, just the killer instinct, as I called it earlier, that I'm the guy. Give me the ball. I want to take the shot. That's the attitude that you need him to have in that situation, especially because he had been the guy all night. He had taken the shots all night, and they couldn't stop him or they fouled him. And that's exactly what Mike Woodson wanted. He wanted him to go to the basket, score, draw the foul. But that didn't happen, as you said. And it's not about confidence or having confidence in players. I think that these guys have to be smarter. They have to know what's best, what's a higher percentage here. Sorry, but X hitting that shot is not a high percentage shot. Trace Jackson Davis, 2 feet from the basket, is a very high percentage shot. And so they've got to use their smarts a little bit more in these situations as well. And I think that's not playing in. They're just trusting someone else is an excuse to me of not doing what you should have done.
Yeah, and I mean,
Alec?
I never want to obviously Mike Woodson coming from the NBA and having the experience and the pedigree that he has, it's difficult, right? Because he's the one coaching. We're sitting back here and talking about it, but I think you have to really look at some of the play calling late in games and really put a lot of that on Mike Woodson, because if you're not able to get Trace Jackson Davis the ball or an open look for one of your better shooters, that has to solely fall on Mike Woodson. There were a lot of really bad play calls, or at least execution of play calls down the stretch. And it's happened in more than one game this season after timeouts, where Indiana just coughs up the ball almost immediately on that possession out of a timeout. And the fact that it seems to be that this offense goes away from any sort of ball screen action late in games when that is your best source of offense, and Xavier Johnson going downhill 15 feet and in, and a Trace Jackson Davis or a Race Thompson rolling to the rim, which is going to get you a foul or a bucket or an offensive rebound every single time. And they never seem to do that late in games. They run the 4-round one. They let Trace Jackson Davis get doubled. He kicks it out just like they've done in almost every single one of these second halves. And that's the offense that seems to go obviously stale, because these guys can't hit shots consistently throughout a game, even if they start hot in the first half. And I really don't understand why this offense can't seem to do what it can for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of a game. And they seem to go away with any sort of scheme that they came into the game with and seem okay with just standing and watching and letting Trace Jackson Davis try to score or get doubled and kick it out for an open shot from a guy who has not consistently shown that he's going to be able to hit that late in games. And I think there needs to, we're at the point, right, where you need to try to do anything you can to fix whatever's going on right now with the 4-game losing streak. But there needs to be some sort of change to this offense late in games, because it obviously hasn't been working, and it's just way too easy to defend from an opponent's standpoint, where I'd almost feel comfortable playing a box and one around Trace Jackson Davis for the last 3 minutes of a game and let either Xavier Johnson, Parker Stewart, Miller Kopp, who's obviously not going to be in there late in the games, which we've seen, but Trey Galloway, any of these guys who really aren't able to score consistently, take a shot and win the game, right? And it's something where you can even go 3-2 zone, 2-3 zone, any sort of defense, and you have so many different options that you can throw at this offense, because there are not scoring threats around Trace Jackson Davis. And it seems like this is just, I don't understand how this cannot be fixed at this point in the season, with some new players on the roster, with everyone on the team last year and the coaches coming in knowing what the issue was. This offense statistically is worse than any one of Archie Miller's offenses in his tenure. And that is mind-boggling when you look at getting Trace Jackson Davis to come back for an extra year, playing at the level that he's played, some of the performances that he's put together, and you just seem to waste some of this talent that is around the roster just due to the fact that you can't put together a simple offensive game plan for a full 40 minutes. And it's frustrating. It's annoying to watch, because you do know that this team, top to bottom, is talented enough to be not only in the top half of the Big Ten, but they're talented enough to be in the NCAA tournament. And here we are with 5 games left, and we're talking about them missing the tournament once again. And it's frustrating to see this sort of stuff happen over and over and over again.